She is joining us today from Calgary, Alberta. Over to you, Tara, like a real radio host.
Hello, good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for attending this. And I just wanted to wish you happy International Women's Day to everyone on this call. It's really funny because I work, partly here in Canada and I go to Sierra Leone, and I've been in Sierra Leone before when it's International Women's Day, and it's a huge celebration. People actually take the day off, women have parties, it's a huge celebration to celebrate women. And I'm not sure why, but in Canada, it doesn't seem to have as much traction. But happy International Women's Day to every one of you, because you are amazing. Just being a woman. So before I start, I just wanted to introduce myself. Thank you so much to Nicole for your introduction, but just very briefly, again, my name is Tara, and I'm a wife and a mom, and I have a toddler currently. I live in Calgary, Alberta, and I run a nonprofit organization called Freedom Tree. And what we do is we are looking to reduce the rates of maternal and infant mortality in West Africa. Specifically, right now, we are working in Sierra Leone in West Africa. And I've been doing this for over a decade now in terms of running the nonprofit. However, I've only been doing it full time for a couple of years. So this is this is a new venture for me in terms of immersing myself completely into the work. And so I just wanted to share a little bit about what I do and how I found my passion, because I'm really, really fortunate that, I'm in a position right now that I get to do what I love every single day. I get to really walk in my passion. And I just wanted to share a little bit of my journey with you, because I meet women and men from all walks of life all the time, who ask me, well, how did you get into what you're doing? And, how did you find your passion? And, what were your challenges getting there? Because I know that the deepest desire of anyone in life is honestly not just to live, but to live for a purpose. Like, why am I here? And to live for a purpose and to be able to have fulfillment in our day-to-day lives. And before I get started on that, I just wanted to share my screen with you. So I did this before. I'm going to share some photos with you of just a couple pictures of kind of what we do in Sierra Leone and some of the women. And then here, let's see. There we go. So those are just a few pictures. I have thousands and thousands of photographs, and you can check out our website afterwards and our social media links to find out more. But those are just a few pictures of some highlights of my time in Sierra Leone. And I can tell you that whenever I go, this country is one of the poorest in the world in terms of, like what people make and that sort of thing. And it's not a convenient trip. It's always really expensive. It can be really challenging physically and difficult. Long journey, from Canada all the way to Sierra Leone, several flights, and then, traveling by road. That particular place that you saw is about a 3-day journey from where I'm based in Sierra Leone, over very rough roads. Like, I'm just bumping, the whole time, just, doing this. There's no running water, no electricity. It's like camping, and I hate camping. I do not like camping. I'm just not one of those, women who's into that sort of stuff. And I can tell you that when I'm there, I feel so alive and so in my element, and despite all the inconveniences of what I'm doing. And that's an indicator If you're in that place, then you're really fortunate, but that's an indicator that you found your passion or one of your passions, because we can have many different passions and many different things that we do. And so for me, I'm really fortunate that I get to be able to do those things. And even what I do here in Calgary and work with people, it brings me so much joy and so much life. So how do you get there? How do you get to a place where you find that thing that you want to do, or one of those things that you are supposed to do, that you were put on this earth for, that fits you, just like that perfect glove that you wear and it fits really well? So I wanted to share a couple tips, in terms of how I got there. And one of the first things is, when finding your passion comes when you're least looking for it. Finding your passion comes when you're least looking for it. A lot of us go and search for that thing that we want to do. You go and look for something that you want to do. But the problem with that is that you're always looking for an external factor, but it actually is already inside of you. Every single one of you women here already have your passion embedded in your heart. You actually don't need to search for it. You just need to discover it. You just need to allow it to come out of you. It's already in there. And so one of the biggest mistakes you can make is actually go and look for it by thinking, okay, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it's this, and you're looking for something to give you that fulfillment. It's already in there. And let me explain. Every single person has passions on their hearts. You have it. It's in there. You just have to find it. And the reason sometimes that we haven't found it is because we've forgotten it. It's being squashed down, or we have not been allowed to develop and to explore it. And every single person, I really believe, has their passion embedded on their heart from when they're a child. And so this thing that I'm doing here was something that I carried on my heart since I was a little girl. I remember like jumping up and down in the living room and, talking to, my dad. My dad's like, okay, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a missionary doctor. Like, I didn't even know what a missionary doctor was, but I knew that every single time, like, my parents, were in the medical profession. And whenever I would see like, medical journals and things like that, whenever I saw kids who were hurting or kids who were sick, it tugged on my heart. And as a 5-year-old, I could even articulate something like that, and missionary doctor, I don't even know what that is. And I think back to those years, and even as a teenager, and some of the things that I would be drawn to or be gravitating towards, it wasn't this big grandiose thing. It was just something that was already there, that's on your heart. And so the second tip I would say, so the first one is, it never comes when you're looking for it. So just calm down, settle down, and look at yourself, in that way. But the second one is, be childlike. Go back to trying to be a child. And what do I mean by that? Children are not afraid. Most children are not, unless they've gone through trauma, and that sort of thing. But most of them are not afraid to explore. They have a really healthy way of being curious. They try things that look silly. They're not worried about the things that we are. Like I have a toddler, and he's not worried about paying the mortgage. He just wants to play. And then he sees a new toy. He's like, oh, what does that do? And lately, his thing is like, oh, things, if I drop food on the floor, it makes a mess. Oh, that's really interesting. How about I try that again? And when you're a child, you're able to explore. You don't have any worries, and you're not afraid to fail. They push the boundaries. They look at you. The only time that they don't want to do something is they know if they're going to get really disciplined or punished for it after. But they learn by trying out new things and by not being afraid to fail. And so my second point to you would be, try to go back to the things that you really loved doing when you were a child, and don't take it too seriously. It can be things like, I just really like, some of you are really good at self-care maybe. And so I just really like going for a walk. I really like being out in nature. If you really like going on the swing and going in the park and jumping in the pool or doing silly things, do that. Forget about the fact that you're now 20-something-year-old, 30-something, 60-something-year-old, and adults don't do those sort of things. Let that go. Be a child. Find your inner child and try to have fun. As you do that, you relieve the pressure off of yourself, of life and the things that you are weighed down by because you're walking in this childlikeness. And then little things that you're actually happy to do come to light. And they can look like really small things like, you know what, I just really love to bake. I hate cooking, but I really love to bake. Or, you know what, I really like to create. I love to sew. I hate doing this, but I really like to sew. Or, you know, I just really like to be hospitable. I don't want to be the person up front, you know, speaking to everybody, but I like to be the person behind the scenes and be hospitable, and just do that. Be true to yourself and just do that. So that's my second point to you, is try and be a child. The second thing is give yourself to something or somebody else. Now, this is where this one scares people, because again, the language that we speak in our society, and especially in Western society, is very much individualistic. And so we talk a lot about finding yourself, finding your passion, going to do the things that you love, but it's all about me, 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 and the things that I want to do. And the problem with that is sometimes your passion is something that you haven't even discovered yet, that you have the skill set for. So I would really encourage you, you wouldn't even know that it's there if you haven't actually gone to go try something new. Lose yourself. So give yourself to something that you love, to something that you really enjoy doing, but to somebody else. So it's not necessarily serving you. And that can look like volunteering, where you're doing something for, for free to an organization or a group of people where you're, supporting and helping out. That can look like in your workplace. Yes, in your workplace that you're not getting paid enough for, and you think that your boss is not treating you well for, but give yourself to that role. Don't be the person when you are asked to take on more responsibilities, or somebody's quit, or somebody's on short-term disability, you get cranky because you have to take on more responsibilities with not as much pay. If you're always that person trying to defend your front and fight for your rights on the things that you'll do, you'll never find yourself in a place where you are actually discovering and doing more, even if you're not getting what you should get for it. Now, you have to hear me carefully. I'm not saying get abused in your workplace and get walked all over. That's not what I'm saying. But don't be afraid to take on more roles than you may not have done before, even if it's out of your comfort zone. Because quite a lot of times your passion is out of your comfort zone. And in that place, you'll discover something that you've never been able to do. For me, practically, this looked like, believe it or not, this person that you're looking at, I spent 13 long years in the construction industry. I don't look like a construction person. I don't know if there's a type that they look at, and it's just, it wasn't my thing. But I had this, actually I was helping somebody out. So there was somebody I knew, who I was referred to. I was, looking for work, and this person was looking for an employee, and they just needed an admin person in their office. He was he ran a, very successful construction company, but his office was a mess. Like, his administration was a mess, and they were just looking for somebody to help out. And I thought, I didn't have a job at the time. I was, pretty young. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to do this for a few months and support you and, and help you out. And then, of course, it started from a bag of receipts, and it grew to me running the entire office, to eventually me running the entire company. I had never done anything to do with admin or finance or anything like that before. Through that process of me being in the construction industry for 13 years, I ended up pursuing my accounting degree and becoming a CMA. I would never have gone down that route had I not said yes to something that was out of my comfort zone, did not serve me specifically, and I was just trying to serve and help somebody else. The same thing when I go to Sierra Leone. The first time I ever went, I didn't wake up one day and start a nonprofit. I actually woke up, and it was after the Civil War, and a group of doctors and nurses, from America and through people I knew, were doing a humanitarian trip to Sierra Leone. And we were supposed to raise a whole bunch of money. And, there was a call out if anybody wants to come. And so I just went, actually, out of more like, wow, I want to go and be somebody who helped. And this grew out of that. And so I would encourage you to lose yourself in something, like, even if it's motherhood, like, to give yourself to something else that is not necessarily, it's not about you, but you're supporting and helping somebody else, another organization, another being. The skills that you learn there, you have to think of your life as your career is a tool belt. You just collect skills over time. There is, in this day and age, there's no perfect career or no perfect path, but you can collect tool belt in your time and keep them in there until you get to where you're going. And so I'd encourage you, give yourself to something else. The third thing is trust. The third thing is trust the process. Trust the process. We don't often find our passion overnight. And quite often, because we each have a unique individual journey, sometimes it's harder to find our passion. Some people come into it really quickly. And I find the people who come into the things that they want to do in life, they have usually been raised in an environment where they've been allowed to explore, they've been allowed to create, they haven't had a lot of trauma in their lives. They've had quite a bit of encouragement, and they have been encouraged to fail. Now, if you are somebody like me, or you've gone through trauma in your past, or some of you have you grew up in homes where you were not allowed to fail, you had to be perfect, everything had to be done right, or your parents instilled into you a sense of responsibility, going out and getting a job to pay the bills, and now you find yourself trapped into a place where you're doing something that you hate to do every day, but you can't get out of it because you have built this life that you need to continue to maintain and to support because you have to pay this bill. And then now you're like, okay, how do I even find my passion? It might take you a little bit longer because you have to undo all of these other ways of thinking that were not healthy before, so that you can get free. And so if you're one of those people, trust the process, don't rush it. Allow yourself to go through a period of understanding, okay, there are some things in how I do things that are maybe not healthy. There are things that I've done in my past that ways of thinking that are not good. If you have a fear of failure, it'll be hard for you to find your passion because you will fail a lot. I screw up all the time, and I have to be okay with that. And a side note on that is that failing and screwing up, for some reason, we women take it really hard. And I'm not sure why that is. I don't know if it's because we are wired relationally, and our relationships mean a lot to us. But working in the construction industry, I found that men would come in. I interviewed thousands of people for jobs like over the years, because there's such a huge turnover in that industry. And so you're constantly hiring and firing. And whenever I interviewed men, they would always show up in my office and they would be so confident, sometimes arrogant and cocky about the things that they were able to do. And so, you ask them, have you run a job before? Oh, yeah, I've run jobs before. Can you handle a crew of 20 people? Yeah, no problem. If you give me a crew of 20 people, I can handle it. This person has never even run a crew of 2 people. They don't know what they're doing, but they're just confident, and they say, oh no, I can do that. Whenever we come to a wage negotiation, they always ask for more. No, I want to get paid, this amount of money, because this is, what I believe it's worth it. And I always say, well, if I hire you at that rate and you're not performing at that rate, you can't get a demotion. You're most likely, it might not be a good fit. No, it's fine. I guarantee you I can do this. Women, on the other hand, would come into my office and they always would have more like a defeated demeanor, about them. And then you ask, have you run a job before? No, I've never done that before. And they don't think about the time where the previous employer, left them on a job site for 2 weeks because he was dealing with something else. And they actually technically did run that job. They just didn't have the title of supervisor on that position. You ask them what they want to make, they always ask for less than the man, even though they're equivalent to. And so I don't know what it is about women on our fear of failure. And then the other thing is, when men start a business and they fail or they go bankrupt, they're more likely, this is a fact, they're more likely to start again really quickly and move on and try again. Women will take a long time to grieve and to let go and to, or the failure, and feel like they have to do it perfectly. And that fear of doing it perfectly prevents a lot of us from actually stepping out and just doing something, because we're so worried about getting it right because of the voices of criticism in our head. And so trust the process. If you have those voices of criticism in your head, work through that process of letting those go, of healing yourself from it or getting healing from that, and moving forward into a place of health where you are not afraid to fail and people around you are encouraging you. And then one of the last thing, 2 more things, the fourth thing I would say is creativity. It's your best friend. think outside the box. As women, we have to be creative. Quite often we're juggling family, relationships, all sorts of things, and we carry the brunt of the work in the family with what we want to do. Be creative. Creativity in your passions and the things that you want to do. Try to think outside of the box. Like don't think that there's just one path or things have to look a certain way. And this comes back to also being childlike, because children are very creative. They come up with unique ways of playing, with things. My son runs around, he seems to think like, a comb is a teething tool. And so he takes one of my combs and I'm like, well, that's a creative way to solve your teething problem right there. Or pick up, different toys. They don't play with toys the way toys were always meant to be intended. They just play with things how they want to play with it. And so it goes back to being childlikeness. And also find a role model. So the last one I would say, find a role model or a mentor or a community. I think for women, this is especially important because we do well in groups. Whenever I go to the gym, the group exercise classes are always full of women, and there's usually like one guy there. Guys usually tend to go work out by themselves and do the thing. Women like to do things in groups. We thrive really well in community and with like-minded people. And so find people who are passionate about what you'd like to do, or mentors, role models, people who are doing those type of things. And you might have to go outside of, again, your immediate circle of people to find that. One of the things I did is I joined the Alberta Women's Entrepreneur Group when I was in the construction industry. And that was really helpful for me because I was surrounded by all these women who were also leaders in their profession and starting new things. And that was really helpful because most of my friends were not in that area. And a lot of my friends at that stage were stay-home moms. And so we just, didn't have as much, in common. So find like-minded people who you can be around. And because like attracts like, and it helps you, you become the average of the 10 people you hang around with the most. And so it really helps you picking the people that you're surrounded by. And I think that's it, in terms of what I'd like to share to you. I wanted to keep it short and sweet, but I would really encourage you, and you're never, ever, ever too old to start, ever, ever. I don't care if you're 80, you're never too old, ever. And I don't care what's happened in your life. I don't care, all the things that have taken place. You're never too old. You're never too old to start again. You're never too old to try something new. I try and do something new that I've never done before, just to get me out of my comfort zone. And so even if it comes down to, I'm a meat and potatoes person, and you know what, today I'm going to try Korean food. Go into a Korean restaurant and just eat, just order something off the menu, eat it. So what if you hate it? Then just leave, pay the bill and leave. Try something you've never tried before. Go skydiving, travel to a country you've never been before. And just the more that you put yourself in these places, you try something new out of your comfort zone, that passion will begin to come. But you don't find it by going looking for the passion. You find it by becoming somebody that can they can actually host the passion that is already in your heart, because it's already in there. I guarantee you, it's already in there. You just have to let it come out. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time and for listening to me. This is so different talking to a screen. I wish I could see more of your faces, but that's okay.
Thank you, Tara. I want to apologize as well. I pronounced your name incorrectly, and I do know better, so I'm super sorry about that.
That's all right. Lots of people do that.
Thank you so much for sharing. I know I feel like I got goosebumps while you were chatting, and I haven't stopped smiling. So I appreciate all of the words that you've shared with us today. Up next, we have Mary Birch. She is the creator of Red House Salsa, passionate about good food, but not always in the kitchen. You can also find Mary on a sports field, all wrapped up in a fun game with others in her community, getting active and enjoying some laughs. So Mary, welcome. And yeah, thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. I'm so excited to speak to everybody today. And Tara, that was a great presentation. I have to show you my sticky note that's stuck to my computer. Oh, can you see that? This is literally my motto. Trust the process.
Yes.
That's been written down on many salsa boxes in my time. Okay, so I've been invited here today to talk to you guys about Red House Salsa. So I'm the creator and owner of the business, and I'm going to tell you about how I went from being a mom to a busy business owner. First of all, I did not travel the world and sample every salsa. I'm not a fine connoisseur of salsa and all the different ingredients. I'm literally just a person who loves to cook. I grew up cooking, and canning was always a hobby of mine. I did a lot of canning with my grandma, and just kind of learned that way. And my hobby became a business kind of through a few little coincidental moments. We used to gift salsa to teachers through the years. I have 4 kids, and we were always looking for that unique present that didn't cost a whole bunch of money. And so we as a family made salsa with our kiddos. And my last kiddos teacher said to me one day when I was volunteering in the classroom, "Hey, Mary, I'm not going to get any more salsa because this is the last Birch kid coming through the class." And it was in that time that she actually kind of encouraged me to go out on a limb and try and sell this salsa at the farmer's market. And that's quite literally how it started. So we signed up with the St. Albert Farmers Market and sold, I think, 80 jars that week on a Christmas market. And to my complete shock, I said to my husband, like, I think I'm going to make salsa. Let's see how this goes. So started making salsa every week, every few weeks at home. Everything we owned in our house smelled like salsa. Every window was open on a winter day when salsa was cooking because the house did smell. My kiddos helped peeling garlic, carrying cases in and out of the garage, and my husband helped quite a bit as well. I have a photo of him even wearing swimming goggles while he's chopping onions in the kitchen because, chopping 70 onions, it's hard on the eyes. So he helped quite a bit with that. I had a friend who stepped in after that who had contact lenses, and she was a boss at chopping onions. It didn't even affect her. It's amazing how that just saves her eyeballs. So I just kept cooking and selling at the market. But 2017, things changed a little bit for our family. My husband was working in the oil patch, and that was the time that Alberta crash was starting to happen. And I was faced with this decision to return to work. My previous life before kids, I worked in health and safety and in EMS, and I decided to get back into that field and went to the RCMP, worked really hard to become a 911 dispatcher, and was really, really excited about it. I thought it was going to be a great job. About 4 weeks into my training, they passed me my schedule for the entire year. So that plan was laid out: 3 days on, 4 days off, 2 weeks vacation. And the first thing I did is look at all the days and realize, like, this day's not going to work for me. I don't really want to work this day. And it kind of put me into a little bit of a panic. And I thought, this is the job I thought I wanted. I don't really want to, commit to this shift and commit to working full time in this capacity. So I came home and I said to my husband, new plan. I'm just gonna make salsa for a living. And that's when I really decided to take a serious look at what I could do and go all in. So I signed up for 3 different markets, and we got our labels designed. So you can see that very well, but we got our official label designed. My sister-in-law is an artist, so she helped me with that. We got our nutrition, our barcode, we got everything put on there, which was not an easy process. I rented a commercial kitchen, so I was no longer in my house. I hired some fantastic other women and friends and moms to help me out. I spent a lot of time with the food scientist, and I learned a lot about cooking. I learned about recipes, ingredients, pH levels, nutritional values, all kinds of stuff that you didn't really think about when you make your own homemade canning food. And our salsa was then good to go. So from that point, I decided to pivot into a few stores. And actually the first store that I got into, it's kind of a funny story, but I purchased every single one of my ingredients from the Italian Center shop in the West End when I was working at the farmer's market. And I would go in there every single week, and I would, harass the produce guy, Nihalta. I would bug him about the tomatoes or bug him about some ingredient, and just really became good friends with lots of people in the store. And I came in one day and showed Dennis, the grocery manager, my new labels and said, hey, check this out. We're going to go to the next level. And in that moment, he literally dragged me into the manager's office, unplanned. I'm in my sweats, I think. I'm not ready to meet a manager. And left me in the office with the manager. And I had this meeting about our salsa and kind of what I could bring to the table. And it worked out fantastically. They loved our salsa. They loved the labels. They were really happy. They knew that we'd been buying, or that I'd been buying my ingredients there for the last 3 years. So I left the meeting, went out to my car, and I phoned my husband, and I couldn't even string together 3 sentences. I was just crying hysterically. And he asked me if I'd been like attacked in the parking lot or something. He couldn't understand why I was so upset. And I just said, like, hey, we're in the stores, like, we made it, like, check the box. I'm so excited. So he like said, come on home and like get yourself together kind of thing. And a week later, we ended up getting into all 4 of the Italian center shops. So the biggest message with that is that if it wasn't for those connections that I had made in that shop, and if it wasn't for going back and seeing the same people every single week, I would have never gotten that opportunity. So I really always stayed true to, the values of my ingredients and the values that I had as a business owner, which was those connections are what's going to help me. The farmers market was a fantastic place for me to learn and grow my business. I worked with all kinds of amazing women and men who own their own business, and literally taught me so much about scaling up, weighing your product, all the kind of behind the scenes things that happen with food. And I learned that business is a community, and there were so many amazing people at that place that you could just network all the time, bounce ideas off of. It's kind of like that idea of, you go to the gym and you try to bring a friend with you, but you might as well just meet friends at the gym, because that's the place where those people already are. You're already surrounded by like-minded people. So today I'm proud to say we're in 40 different retail locations, and we're continuing to grow. And when I think back to that time, just being in my kitchen and my husband wearing the goggles and my kids like helping out with stuff, I would have never, ever imagined that I would be where I am today. I love sales calls. I love just connecting with people and going out and reaching out to stores. It's kind of the easiest part for me, which most people might think is the difference. I don't have a hard time just picking up the phone and talking to people. The salsa getting made, that's a lot of fun, but I really like the connections. That's the part that I really live for every day. And just recently, I'll share the story with you. I was kind of interested why a store in Drumheller hadn't restocked or sent me an email to restock. So I reached out and gave the grocery store manager a call. And he was kind of busy. Those guys are busy in those stores. They're always managing a million different things. And we just started chatting about St. Albert. Turned out he graduated from Sturgeon Composite High School. That was the school that I was planning on going to when I moved to St. Albert. And he went on to explain that his father was in the Air Force and my dad was in the military. He was in the Army. And I don't know if everybody knows this, but when you're a military kid, if your dad's an Air Force guy or your dad's an Army guy, I still can't really explain it, but I just know there's rivalry there. And the Army guys are better. And anyways, we had this ridiculous half-an-hour conversation about Air Force, no, Army. And at the end of the conversation, he said to me, like, yeah, Mary, this sounds great. Just send me the salsa. He didn't even ask me anything else about it. So we just found that common connection ground. And it was hilarious. I thought it was so funny. And I'm sure if my dad's listening, he will think that's pretty funny too, because I know there is rivalry there. I'll have to get the full story from him later. So full circle, it's International Women's Week, and we've got to talk about balancing a family. I have 4 kids. My husband's out of town. He's always been out of town. He's kind of back and forth. And I've really thought long and hard about this and how to motivate and inspire other women. And I got to say, it's tough. There's no easy balance, I don't think, for trying to be a mom, trying to be a business owner, trying to do it all. It's not easy. It's hard. And I think that other women, as Tara pointed out earlier, when we surround ourselves with other people who can inspire us and bring us up, I find that really works well for me. I have learned that self-care is so important. But unfortunately, it's not always available. I know in my house, if I want to go have a bath, chances are there's another kid already in that tub. So you're always kind of trying to figure out what you can do to take care of yourself. And I think the biggest thing I've learned is to take the small wins. And, when my kids were younger, I always had them in bed by 7 o'clock because that was just the routine. That's what made things work for me. And Thursday was always my cleaning day. I didn't do any cleaning until Thursday. Glass of wine definitely has helped. Got to admit that. The biggest thing with COVID for me was exercise. I realized how much I missed exercise and how much I missed playing sports. So I actually got myself the Peloton app, and I don't know if any of you guys have that, but Alex is my personal motivator. I feel like when he's talking that he's speaking directly to me. The guy can get me excited about anything at 7:30 in the morning, and this is just through a connection on a phone, right? Through an app. The other thing that I would really suggest to women that are looking at getting back into work or starting their own business is, rely on a network. You definitely have to have people that have your back. I've been really fortunate. My family's been phenomenal. For 3 years when I worked at the farmer's market, my mom and dad took my kids. I had friends carpooling with other kids to soccer games or basketball games while I was working, and that's the only way that I could make it work. I've always tried to set myself up for success in the sense that I haven't said yes to everything that my kids want to do. I've said to them, guys, you get to pick one sport, and there's 4 of you and 1 of me, and this is how it's going to work. For business wise, this year I hired a bookkeeper, and that was a humongous game changer for me. Having someone keep me accountable, check on my plan, my business plan. I literally now just take a photograph of my receipt. It's the most amazing thing. I can call her for absolutely anything I need. And it just feels so good to know that there's somebody there, because as an entrepreneur, you're doing everything yourself. So yeah, my bookkeeper, love her. She's amazing. I also hired my cousin, who's a social media genius. She also runs her own business. So she helps me with my website, my social media, all the creative ideas that I just sometimes don't have time for. And I just think those ideas don't always flow easily for me. She's always got something that she's thinking of. And I'm just so grateful for her. I think my biggest criticism for myself is overthinking. I tend to overthink things. And I think sometimes that's a woman thing. I'm not too sure if everybody out there agrees, but I have a hard time making a final decision, and I spend a lot of time researching and chatting, and kind of tend to think about all the good that can happen and all the bad. And when you own your own business, that's just something that's really hard to do, is to just realize you got to just go for it and not worry so much about the risk. Sometimes it can be a little bit lonely because you don't have really anybody else to rely on. It's all on your own shoulders. Even though you might have done that research, you still are the one who's taking the chance to change. And Tara, also you commented on this, but one of the biggest quotes that I kind of go back to all the time is like, you do not grow in your comfort zone. And I truly find that if I am put into a situation where I have to take a risk and go for it, I always try to just say yes and do it and figure out the logistics afterwards. Because if you wait for the perfect time to do something, or the perfect time to launch a business, the perfect time to have a baby, the perfect time, it doesn't exist. You have to just do it. You have to start and dive in. And if you're out there and you're thinking about doing your own business, or you're thinking about getting back to work, there's a million different reasons why you should, but there's also that opportunity that's there. My number one tip, I don't have as many points. I got one tip. And I think the biggest thing is don't compare yourself to other people. It doesn't matter. You just do you. You do you. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you guys today. I hope I've given someone a little bit of inspiration. And thank you so much, Nicole and Sturgeon County.
Thank you, Mary. When you were telling your story about the Italian Center, I was tearing up. I'm quite an emotional person. So that's such a wonderful thing to hear. And so thank you for sharing and being vulnerable with us as well.
Thank you.
Up next, we have Wanda Nicole. She's a visionary social change agent who is passionate about reconciliation with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. through creating social enterprise and healing through trauma as a nation. So Wanda, welcome.
Morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me okay. My Wi-Fi is not great out here, but hopefully you can hear me okay. So my name is Wanda Nicole. Some people, Nicole is my middle name. Some people know me as my first name, so I'm good with whatever people feel called to call me. And I'm the executive director and founder of an organization called Lion's Heart Wholeness Center. And Lion's Heart Wholeness Center the truth is I actually didn't know what it was going to be when I first started it. I just knew that I had this concept. And really what it kind of means to me is it's about empowerment and finding all the pieces of ourselves that we may have lost along the way or that we've just forgotten we have, and really becoming kind of a whole human being again. And so it's interesting to listen to Tara and to Mary, because I actually have the same note on my screen. It's trust the process. And I'm not at my home computer, so I can't show you, but that is taped on a sticky note on my computer screen as well. And when you guys talk about the comfort zone theory is actually one of the tools we teach here in our center. And that's been a huge piece for me, is just being able to have the courage to step outside my comfort zone. So you have a little bit of background, a little bit more background on Lion's Heart. We are more of a trauma-informed educational center, and we run retreats and programs that are really about empowering people to find their own pathways into healing, and more importantly, to step into their purpose in the world. I'm someone who doesn't like to be told what to do. And so I wanted to create a place where people could come and kind of find what healing looks like for them and what their purpose is for them in a way that they get to find their own ways. And we actually operate just north of Legal, just outside St. Albert or Morinville, in a place called Lily Lake Resort. And so for us, operating a Lily Lake Resort, it's kind of an older space. It's got lots of history, but it's on the land. And we really believe that the environment plays a really key role in finding ourselves and really reconnecting back to the land. And for me, when I first started this journey, one thing that was really important for me was to respect the spirit of the land that we're on. And the land here in this area is Indigenous. And so as a mostly non-Native woman, I really made a decision to respect and honor that. And so right from the beginning of starting this, we have worked with Indigenous people. My whole process began with going into a sweat lodge and really just honoring that is the spirit of this land here. So we have kind of 4 programs we run, and I just want to give you guys some context about what we do so you can understand a little bit more about myself. We run a program. The first program we run is called Breathe, and it's really just a retreat program about being able to kind of get into your body and reconnect to the land and heal in some way. Our second program is called Ignite. And that one's a little bit more about the purpose side. It's about igniting that inner fire inside of you so you start to find and step into what you're really meant to do. Our third program is called Stoke. So all of these are around building a fire, and it's called Stoke. And Stoke is really more kind of the pre-employment, kind of life skills, vocation empowerment piece, where it's about the practical applications of, okay, so now I kind of have some sense of what I want to do. How do I take those steps with support? And the fourth program we run is a program called Gather, and that's really a family-based program. So it's about family renewal, families kind of getting together and spending time together, and maybe a healthier way or a different way than we've done in the past. And the truth is, my educational background actually has nothing to do with any of this. This has been more of a personal journey. And so I really resonated again with Tara when you talked about sometimes your purpose just happens when you're not expecting it. And for me, that's really what this has been about. I think this journey of creating this venture and this business has really been actually about my own personal growth. And that's really what I had to kind of sink into. So my team, my educational background is I'm an experiential learner. I moved here, I grew up in Southern Saskatchewan. I moved here, I went to high school in Toronto, and I moved here really not knowing what I was going to do with my life. But I knew that I was someone who needed to experience things and learn. And for me, again, when I talk about the Indigenous side, I got really clear that my role here is not I am not here to bring anything forward to anyone. My role is simply to carry a vision and to create a container for other people to step into their gifts. So most of my facilitators are Indigenous, and they are the experts in what they talk about. And I really just create the container, the environment for them to come and deliver and teach their knowledge, as well as with my staff. And you'll meet one of my support staff after this. Melody's going to speak. And again, also just about seeing the gift in people and giving them a space to really stand in that so that we can all learn together. My background, I mentioned a little bit that this is not my background, but early on in my life, there were some key things about me that really have set me up to kind of go on this journey. I grew up in Southern Saskatchewan. I grew up super independent. My mom really taught us to use our voice. She taught us to not be scared to take risks and to really go for what we want to do and to be really vocal about what we want to do and what our opinions are. And so I think looking back on my childhood, I realized that I kind of developed some of these skills. I just didn't know where they would take me. And then again, when I moved from Alberta or from Ontario, I went into kind of the corporate world. And at that point, I kind of wanted to prove that I could be as good as any man at working and at being successful. And so my first two jobs were two startup companies where I really got to have that experience of seeing what it starts to create something from the ground up. And that experience was so important for me because I got to really see we will fail a million times, and that's okay. That's a big part of the learning experience. And also what it takes to create something. Really, when you're an entrepreneur or women even in business at home, we carry a lot and we do a lot of things, and that's one of our gifts, I think, as women. My last job before I became self-employed was working for a really large public company. And at that point, I really got to see what it looks like to be on the other side of, once you've stabilized and you've kind of been through the tough times, what it looks like on that side. And it was at that point that I really knew that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to be my own boss. So at 25 years old, I went into a business with actually a partner, and I started in a business that I really had literally no background in. And ironically, it was the wedding design business. And I became an event designer for big South Asian and Lebanese weddings. And it was way outside my comfort zone. I actually had never decorated a wedding in my life. And here I was, an event designer. But the lucky thing was I was resilient, and I ended up being pretty good at what I did. However, what I wasn't good at was understanding some of the pieces of myself. So 5 years in, even though I delivered a really good product, my company was on the verge of bankruptcy, and mostly just because I didn't know how to value myself as a business person and as a woman. I really didn't know how to value myself. And so I got beaten up and I learned the hard way. And back in 2013, I found myself kind of at a crossroads. And I had to make a decision whether I was going to bankrupt my company and kind of give up, or what I wanted to do. So at that choice, I made a decision to go into personal development and start to look at my own healing and my own trauma and understand why I was the way I was and where I ended up. So I took a course, and in this program, this is really where things changed for me. So in this program, they have something called a long-term vision. And it's a process where you literally close your eyes and they take you into an experience in the future and you see what it is that you're meant to do. And I went very reluctantly into this process, did not really believe that it was possible. And yet the vision I had was so incredibly clear. I could see everything that I'm living in now. I could see the pieces of it. I could see the buildings. In fact, pieces of Lily Lake here are very much like what I saw in my vision. And at the end of that process, they make you draw a picture and you have to date it. And so I dated mine for February 2018. Again, had no idea how I was ever going to get from where I was to here. But what I did know is that I wanted to go back and fix my mistakes. I wanted to learn and I wanted to clean up my business so I could leave it in a good place. So I really kind of set the vision aside, knowing that it was there, but I really went into, just focusing on myself and doing my own learning and growing. And I noticed that the more I began to become clear on who I was, the more pieces of that vision started to show up in weird ways. When you talk about coincidences, there was a lot of coincidences for me. And in 2017, I really had kind of cleaned up my business, and I knew that I was at that place where I was ready to step into whatever it was. And so I made a choice to walk away from my business and just surrender and see what came up. And at the time, there was a Brene Brown's one of my favorite authors, and there was a book that I read and a quote that I read that literally changed my life. And I want to share it with you guys today. And the quote is actually by Theodore Roosevelt. And it says, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but one who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, and who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold, timid souls who neither know victory or defeat." And what Brene said about this quote was, and I really resonated, and it literally changed my life. And she said, I want to be in the arena. I want to be brave with my life. And when we make the choice to dare greatly, we sign up to get our asses kicked. We can choose courage or we can choose comfort, but we can't have both, not at the same time. And for me, I really realized that that's what had been happening for me, but I hadn't had the awareness to be comfortable and to be okay with the fact that I was uncomfortable. So as I began to launch this Lion's Heart journey, I took 3 things forward with me from my past experiences. And the first was I had learned to become really authentic. If you had met me 10 years ago, I was clomping around in high heels, dressed in my dress clothes, and lived downtown and was busy all the time. And the truth is now I wear yoga pants every day, and I come to work in moccasins, and I'm sitting on the floor right now in my office because that's where I'm comfortable. And I've learned to really step into who I am. I've learned that I don't have to do business as men. In fact, I've learned that my power actually comes in just being myself as a female. The second piece is that I've really learned to take risks. And I've learned those by falling and scraping my knees and by being in the arena, truly being in the arena and finding myself face down in the mud. And trying to find the courage to get up, which is the third piece that I've really taken forward, and that's resilience. Knowing that every mistake I've made has literally taught me something that has given me a tool to put me where I am now. And so when the Lion's Heart journey started, it really did start. I had made this decision to just surrender. And so I took Prince into a sweat lodge. I have lots of friends that are in the Indigenous world, and that was a huge part of my own healing, was finding myself through some of their ways. And again, it's not about, I respect that those aren't my ways. I just knew that that was a place I felt comfortable and at home. And so I went into the sweat lodge and I went into this process of surrender. And from there, it would probably be a 3-hour conversation about all the pieces and all the signs and all the things that happened along the way. But essentially, it began to start, and quite without me having a plan. Every time I would write a plan, it would basically go out the window. And I realized that I just had to surrender and say yes to the things that came into me that felt like they were the right path. And I mean, along the way, I have the most amazing team. We've got a team of people that this is really their background and their expertise. And so all those people came to me in weird ways. And the interesting thing for me was that when we finally made the decision to incorporate it as a business, it was January 2019, January 30th, actually, which is the day before I had done my post. So for me, on a spiritual perspective, there was no real ability for me to question anymore that I was in the place that I was supposed to be. I was doing what I was meant to do. And, I'd like to say that the journey, this was 2.5 years, almost 3 years ago now. I'd like to say that the journey got easy and that suddenly I was in purpose and life was magical. But the truth is it wasn't. My personal shit came up every day, and I still constantly be aware of learning more about who I am and really getting myself through some of those barriers. I always say to the clients and the learners that are here with us is we're all learning together, we're all healing together. And when I see other people around me standing in their gifts, standing in their purpose, it really inspires me to stay in my own. And I think the truth is, if I wasn't in my purpose, I don't know that I would have had the courage to get up out of the mud so many times. But there's something about doing what you're meant to do that really, for me, makes it possible to go through things that I normally wouldn't have the strength to go through. So it has absolutely been a journey. It's absolutely been an adventure, but I'm so grateful. When we heard people talk, some of the other ladies talk about community, the truth is it has been a village behind me. It has been a community, women and men. And the only way I could have done this is with all the support I've had around me for this. I would say that, for me, it's been a constant choice every day to choose courage over comfort. I've had to make it a conscious decision that I make. And I think, for me, really learning as a woman that there are gifts that we bring that aren't necessarily natural to men. And for me, it's really been my ability to be compassionate, our ability to be compassionate, our ability to see the big picture, and our intuition. We all have intuition. It's just a matter of whether we actually choose to listen to it, and to be creative. This has taken me being creative in ways that I didn't even think were possible. So there's always a way. I think as women, we always are solution focused. So finding a way, there's always a way around everything. And I wanted to just kind of close because I want to give Melody, who's going to speak next, with a little bit of an invitation to you. So my invitation to all of you on Women's Day is to be yourself. I think that's what I've learned is if you show up in the world as who you are with no apologies, that's good enough. And to really trust your intuition and don't be afraid to take risks. Fall, get back up, and know that there are many of us out there that are in the arena beside you, falling and getting back up. You're not alone. And also to be strong. I mean, as women, we're life givers. That's what one of our gifts is. We have the ability to birth life. So support each other and create and birth your ideas into the world. Follow your heart. And I think really, for me, unapologetically show up as who you are. You have gifts. And I really think right now, with everything going on in the world, I think the world actually needs women more than ever to step into leadership, whether that's at work, whether that's being entrepreneurs, whether that's being really great moms and having really great children. That's a hugely important gift that we bring into the world as women, in your community or whatever arena that you're in. I think that my invitation to you is to really get into the arena and choose courage over comfort. And I think that sums up what I felt like I wanted to share today. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I believe Melody's going to speak next. And Melody is one of my team members.
Thank you so much for sharing, Wanda. You spoke about so many things that I have been taught, but have forgotten about. So I appreciate the reminder there. Brene Brown is like my I don't even know, role model. She's incredible. So that quote that is in her book as well, like it is something that I should remember more often. So thank you. So yeah, up next we have Melody Chief. She's an Indigenous chef by trade, who has found herself leading the way for other Indigenous women to be visible as leaders and change agents for healing and restoring cultural ways. So Melody, thank you for being here today.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Melody, and I'm from Treaty 6 territory on Turtle Island. My native name is Kiheo, that means Eagle Sky Woman. And I'm here to tell my story as an Aboriginal woman. I guess my trauma started when I was born. My birth mother left me in a hospital. I was only 3 days old and left me there with no name or nothing. And one of the nurses, her name was Grace, she actually knew this couple from back home, and she actually got a hold of them and she told them about me, and they came and picked me up. And my mom now, my adopted mom, she named me along with the nurse. So that's where my name came from, Melody Grace. So they came and got me and they raised me up and legally adopted me. And actually they were my grandparents. I don't think of them as my grandparents, but I think of them as my parents. I grew up in a reserve north of Lloydminster, and it's called Onion Lake First Nations. So I grew up there, and I would say it was a very hard, difficult life. I never knew my culture. I never knew and experienced drugs or alcohol in my early years of life. And then growing up, I was always like canning and gardening and helping a lot of people out back home. And I wasn't allowed to do any of the other stuff that I saw my other friends doing. And I really wanted to learn that, but I couldn't. So I attended day school. I know I always hear a lot of people talk about get over it, but I am here as a survivor of day school, a survivor of sexual abuse from day school. And I'm working on the trauma of what had happened back then. It still affects my life, but I know that it wasn't my fault, and everything the teacher did to me was all his fault. And that's another big story. But I know if I talk about it, it will ease me in my heart. So anyways, I left home when I was 11 years old, and I went to Southern Alberta, and I went to school south of Edmonton, and lived there and worked at a young age. And that's where I met my ex-husband. And we stayed together, and I had a baby when I was 21 years old. And that's where my trauma started again. One day when I was gonna go breastfeed my baby, he called me, and I said yes. And then he said, "Have you ever been hit?" And I told him, "Yeah, I've been hit when I was younger, when I didn't do anything right." And I didn't think anything about it. So I went down the hall to go to the bedroom, and he called me, and I turned around. As soon as I turned around, that was the first time he ever hit me in my life. And he hit me so hard that I had to hold on to my baby while I fell back. And I was so stunned, and I thought, what the hell, what happened? What just happened? I got myself up with my baby, and I went to the room, and I cried in there, because that's where the abuse started with him. And from then on, I had to endure that abuse with him for 12 years of my life. And it brought a lot of hurt and pain, where I was told that nobody will ever love me because I had 3 boys. I was every imaginable abuse you can think of. I went through it. I couldn't even go and do my own grocery run. He had to do it. I provided for me and my kids, and to him, I handed my financial things to him. And towards the end of the relationship, he just about killed me and my kids. That's when I had my faith in God to get me out of that situation for good. I'll get me out of this situation for good, alive with my children, and I'll leave this place. And just like that, after he tormented me and my 3-month-old baby, I escaped. And I went to the neighbors, and I called the RCMP, and he got charged for what he did to me and my baby, and he got 11 years for what he did. So I left. And I never turned back. I went back home, and I discovered freedom. And then from there, I discovered that I could do anything I want without being hit, or, being called down. But then back then, I discovered freedom and addictions. So I was 27 years old, and I first tasted alcohol. And, if I could turn back time, I would never ever taken that first drink. So alcohol destroyed my life back then. And it got to the point where I was going to work, and during work, I would start drinking, leaving work and go drink. It was just a daily thing, and nobody knew, and because I hid it. I had a lot of friends back then, which I thought I had a lot of friends. And today, they weren't my friends at all. They were just there just to drink with, because they knew, I provided all the drinks and whatnot. And it really destroyed my life. I got to the point where I didn't care. I have 6 boys, and I choose alcohol over my boys. I chose that lifestyle. I threw away my children, my house, everything. I walked away from that life, and I just went on a real big drinking pattern. And it was during the first year my kids got apprehended. It was the first year that I really thought about my life, and I actually thought of suicide. And I thought, I can't do this to myself. I can't do this to my kids. And I didn't know where to go. I didn't want to stay back home because, I was already labeled as a drunk and partier and whatnot. And I called my sister. She's been my biggest supporter. And I called her and I told her, I said, I need to leave. So she invited me to go to where she lived in that town. So I went there, and I slowly started thinking about my life because I wasn't getting younger. I was getting older, and I thought a lot about my kids that I lost. So I put myself in a clinic, Brenton Clinic for Drugs and Alcohol, and I was an outpatient for 2.5 years. And then I applied for a house back home, and after 12 years, I got a house, and I thought, okay, should I move back home or should I stay here? So I did the pros and cons with my counselor, and I eventually moved home. And so I went home and thinking my life would be great. Uh, Going back to reserve, it really broke me and my kids up with every cons we did, all the pros we did. The cons outweighed the pros, and everything that I talked about happened. And it really broke me and my children up. And my boys started experimenting with drugs and alcohol. And as a mother, not knowing that I was the one that did wrong, and they saw me what I did. They always used to tell me, "Mom, well, you did this before," and I tried so hard to correct it. And I had to learn how to forgive myself and to love me. I never could say I love you to my children before. And working on myself, I learned to accept who I was because I was always put down. I had to learn to love me because I always used to seek love and it wasn't. And until I learned how to love who I am today. And then I was doing odds and ends, doing jobs back home where, there were jobs that are going to be there. And I thought, do I see myself sitting in this chair for the rest of my life to a job that, it's not going to take me anywhere? And then, so I applied for schooling. And then my first job was I wanted to be a mortician, and that didn't work out. So I said, okay, my other passion is I wanted to be a chef. So I applied to be a chef, and I got accepted. And then my kids are already all growing up, and I thought, okay, I only have my baby with me, and then I'm gonna try and save him because he went through his own trauma in school back home. And I told him, I said, you don't have to go to school. I said, if this is going to happen where the principal would believe the other people, and I know you're right because of the things that happened to you, so you don't have to go to school. And then me and him left, and we went to school. I went to school. I went to culinary school, and I learned a lot from the chefs in that school, Chef Colleen and Chef Mallory. They believed in me. I was actually the oldest person to go to school to be a chef, and I pushed myself. And of all the people that applied from back home, I was the only one to graduate. So here I was, I graduated, and I thought, okay, well, I'm going to try to give back to my community. So I went back home, and I applied for a job, and then this company took me. Actually, the only reserve, no, it was the only restaurant back home, and then I went to the restaurant to go apply. So I got the job, and I got to be a manager for the restaurant. And what I've learned in school, I did everything right in this restaurant. However, I experienced violence, lateral violence in the workplace. I put myself in that situation for 2 years, and it got to the point where uh, I was being threatened to be hit because I was only doing my job. So I thought, okay, this place is causing a breakdown on me. I'm going into depression because, this is my life. This is my passion of what I wanted to do in my life. And then I put in my resignation, and my boss was giving me a hard time back then, but, so the last day I walked out of there and I thought, okay, I proved to myself, to me, not to them, that I did it. I did it. Prove to them that they were so much in a hole money wise that I took them out of the hole, even though it took me 2 years. And then after that, I left. I told my sister, I said, you know what? I said, let's go for a trip. So me and her left, and we did a 7-day tour in 11 states. And right through that time, my nephew was trying to call me. And when we got back to Canada, my phone started ringing. So I was answering my phone. It was my nephew, and he told me, they need a cook where I work. He said, can you please come? And, I kept hearing his messages. And then sure enough, I called Wanda. And the Wanda is the one that was talking before me. And so I went to his interview. I didn't know where Lily Lake was, and I kind of got lost. So went to my interview, and, and Wanda more or less handed me the golden plate to work for her. And so I came here and not knowing what I was getting into. So, I started doing my job, and I knew in my heart that this was a place for me. And this is where I'm supposed to belong. Don't work in a kitchen no more, but I am a support worker because I've been through a lot of the trauma. The people that come here, I went through that. I went through so much abuse in my life that I am learning how to talk about it now, and to tell people out there, like all of you women said, trust the process. I told my boss, trust the process, trust the process. And it's like I had to laugh when I heard Tara talk about that and the other woman, because you have to learn to trust that process and to have the faith in your life, and to succeed in, it doesn't matter where you come from, doesn't matter what you've been through, but you know what, to believe in yourself and to love you for who you are. And I really love where I'm at right now, to make a difference in other people's lives, and to tell people about your story, tell people about everything you went through without being ashamed, not to be, to be embarrassed, because that's where the healing starts, and to love for who you are. I always tell my children that they're all growing up now, I have 6 boys. My babies are my twins. They're actually 23. And then May of 20 months ago, I got a call from child welfare, and they told me about this little baby that was born. So they were telling me that a baby was born in Royal Alec and he didn't have a name, and he was addicted to heroin, and he was actually a bloodline of mine, and they wanted to know if I wanted to keep him. And I thought, okay, well, I thought to myself, can I do this? I'm over 50 years old. Can I do this to raise another baby up? So anyways, I wanted to meet him, and I said, okay, I will give this a chance. So I went to go meet the little baby, and he was so tiny and he didn't have a name. He reminded me of me when I was a baby. He didn't have a name. The birth mother walked out on the baby when he was 3 hours old. The baby had an addiction to heroin, and I fell in love with him. And then as the days went by, they were asking me, are you sure you're gonna, take this baby? Because he might not be, he might have difficulties growing up. And I thought to myself, you know what? I said, when you provide love and care for what my parents did to me, he will succeed in his life. So I took him in. I had to learn how to be a mother to a newborn baby again. At my age, I am 53 years old. So, I had to learn sleepless nights, diaper change, everything. I had to learn how to administer morphine to him because of his addiction. And 107 days it took me to wean him out of his addiction. He's healthy now. He finally got his legal name 4 months ago, and I'm in the process of adopting him. He's a healthy little boy, and I had to learn to be a mother again. I had, like all the other women, I had to juggle my life with work, and it gets easier. It gets easier, and believe in yourself. And I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about me and what I had to go through in my life, and it taught me how to be a strong Native woman. And no matter what you go through, that we're all still here. Have the faith in yourself, and love who you are. And we're only here in this lifetime. We're only given one chance to use this life. And you know what? And I do every day. And I'd like to, kind of nervous. I've never talked in front of a lot of people, so don't mind me. And that's a little bit about my story. And I will never forget my life, And I wish you all a good day. And thank you for listening to me. Hi.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing, Melody. Sorry, I'm got a frog in my throat as well. I'm trying to think of the words to say, but I don't know if I can even do it justice. So I just want to say I feel that you're the definition of strength and courage, and hearing your story and talking about the different challenges you went through is so important, reducing that stigma towards mental health and addiction. So just thank you. And I'm so grateful to have you here today with us. Up next, we have Mayor Alanna Hnatiw. She was elected the mayor of Sturgeon County in 2017. Mayor Hnatiw comes from generations of farmers, but has spent most of her adult life as a small business owner in oil and gas service industry. Mayor Nacho is committed to actively strengthening regional relationships and developing a prosperous future for Sturgeon County. Her goal is to support diversification in industry and agriculture and support small businesses. I'm happy to have her here today because I think, there's so much, and it's great to have representation from somebody from the county as well. So thank you, Mayor Nacho. I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. I just want to, you can hear me and you can see my screen. Excellent. Okay. There's been, so many incredible speakers already, and some really common threads. And obviously, this one I think resonates for many of us. Life is what happens while you're busy making other plans. And I think if I could, summarize a theme for my life, and it sounds like a few of the other women today, this is how it works. And it's so funny, Tara, your words right out of the gate rung true about, just filling a need and stepping out and trusting in the process. And I would say I was trusting in the process before I was even really aware that there was a process. And then when I was going through pictures of my, family, kind of preparing for today's presentation, I was trying to be respectful of my family's privacy. So I didn't, put a bunch of pictures of them in, but there was a picture of my son wearing swim goggles, chopping onions in the kitchen. so I really, your story resonated with me very much, Mary. And then Wanda, sharing the Man in the Arena quote. I love Brene Brown's work. It is absolutely amazing. And obviously, another quote I'd heard came to mind when you were talking about how your story unfolded. And the quote of, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous, because it's interesting how random things in our lives string together in ways that until we have a different perspective and the distance of time, we don't necessarily understand them in their fullness, which is why it's important as well to trust. And something I love about Brene Brown's work as well is around vulnerability and courage. Vulnerability is often seen as a weakness, but it is actually courage in its truest sense. And I think Melody just showed us a perfect example of that. So thank you very much for sharing your story, Melody. I've always been a fan of Lily Lake, and now even more so. So I'll be out there to take some of the classes that you're offering, and to hopefully sit down and have a cup of coffee and get to know both of you women a little bit more. So I'm going to, I'm not all that savvy at slideshow presentations, so I'm hoping that this goes well. I'll do my best. Oh, there we go. There we go. So, the discussion around bias and experiencing bias, I was reading that, the hashtag and thinking about today and thinking about how often I've experienced bias in my life. And really, it went right back to, childhood. As you can see a picture of me and my brother. And certainly that's, family of origin is where I first started experiencing bias. I grew up just naturally as a tomboy and bumped up against the different expectations between boys and girls and between my brother and I. And I certainly felt less freedom and more accountability and more subjective to the scrutiny of a community. I remember as a teenager, if I was leaving the house to go somewhere, I literally had to give a guest list and a flight plan pretty much. And my brother would just walk out the door and they would ask him if he was going to be home, for the next few days. And so it just chafed against me. So very early on, I could see that there was different rules and different expectations. And I always felt like I had to work even harder to be taken seriously. And that there was, places where men just had a right to go and women did not. And a question my mom would often ask me if I was wanting to do something, whether it was I wanted to take woodworking class, I wanted to take welding, in school, and I was pushed towards, no, girls take home ec, so I was able to at least, my dad insisted I couldn't take welding, so we settled on woodwork, but I would constantly be told, like, what will people think? And what, and yes, we should maybe consider that for a split second, but I think what we think of ourselves and how we feel about ourselves is far more important. So, I grew up wanting to be independent. I never wanted to get married. I didn't plan on having children. I was afraid I would lose my independence and not be a good parent. My parents had an abusive marriage, so I wasn't interested in any of the family dynamics. But 5 years of a relationship with a loving and committed man who definitely wanted kids. We negotiated and settled on having one child. I was up for that. And so clearly my husband is a better negotiator than I am, because we ended up with 2 boys. And, because he knew that independence was important to me, I didn't necessarily want to be a stay-at-home mom. We decided that, depending on where we were at in our careers and who could step away for, a couple of those early years, then that's what we would do. We don't really have pink and blue jobs in my house. In fact, I'd rather be out on the tractor or mucking stalls, and my husband would rather be in cooking dinner. So we've got our roles sorted out. So as it ended up, I had got a job for a great company. It was growing quickly. I was doing marketing and advertising and showing some promise there. So they were putting me through university on evenings and weekends. And my husband was working full-time in the oil field and started up an oil field service company on the side. So he was basically working, 2 weeks on, and then on his 2 weeks off, he would take care of our business. And I was, as you can imagine, working full-time and going to university, very busy, but had decided that we were going to start a family. So we would just start the process. And in my mind, I thought it could take years before I get pregnant. Who knows? Well, it didn't. It happened right away. And lo and behold, we had a new business, a new house. And when I was 5 months pregnant, the company that I worked for had been quite successful and determined to sell the franchise back to corporate. So I found myself without a job. So it was pretty clear that I was going to be the stay-at-home parent for the next few years. But certainly, as many of you can probably attest to, that can be isolating, definitely. And then as well, because my husband's job took him out of town and the business grew, I basically, for all intents and purposes, in the first few years, I felt like a single parent, which was not something I had signed up for. I had negotiated one child, and then I had one, and then suddenly seemed to have one child, but a husband that was missing in action. So definitely, that was an experience, but one where I, persevered and reached out to create a network of friends and family and supporters. As you guys all know, it's, as I think Tara said, you're the average of who your 10 friends are, your 10 acquaintances. And so I did my best to create a community for myself and my son, but ultimately, we had to make adjustments so that we could at least be a family together more often. And so we made a move up here because at the time we were living in Calgary, so new to the community again. But I couldn't imagine my life not being here. And I certainly couldn't imagine my life without the compassionate men in my life, both my husband and my 2 boys. They are quite amazing. But I would say, just by default, being that at-home parent, and an at-home parent with a husband that has a small business, you start assuming roles and doing work that just, you become the catch-all for everything that needs to take place, but doesn't necessarily have anybody being accountable. And so I did that in our business. I also volunteered in my kids' schools. I volunteered at Sunday school. I did peer counseling in inner city Edmonton, and just assisted wherever I could with my kids' sports and school. again, just, filling gaps in family and in business and in my community, whether it was, occupational health and safety training, to hiring and firing staff, to literally running equipment, bobcats, semis, and never really contemplating what I wanted. Really, just sometimes, as you would all know, you're just really in survival mode. And so you pick the battles that need to be won that day, and asking myself what I wanted just wasn't in the cards. But I did get a huge sense of fulfillment from serving my family and my community. But definitely go with the flow was the word of the day, and just be very highly adaptable, because between business, school, and those volunteer positions, no 2 days were the same. But ultimately, I had wanted to live out in the country. Space was important to us. Our critters were important to us. So we worked to build a life together. And as you can see, the flow was fast. As I said, my husband was out of town a lot, and we kept kind of collecting pets and animals, and the kids loved their sports. Life was busy and life was full, but there was just, I would say, a little bit of something missing for me, because as much as I love service and filling the gaps, I was exhausted at just doing what everybody else needed me to do, and I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do or be when I grew up. And so when comments earlier about what you do based on how old you are, and are you ever too old to start something, those were all kind of fears, as I could see my life just stretching out before me, meeting everyone else's needs, but not really thinking much about what my needs were. And so as things would have it, we sold our business, the kids were getting older. I wasn't required in my family as much at the time, or so I thought. So I started looking at jobs in the local community, and found a job in sales and design support, which I worked at for a number of years, and was quite successful, and grew to be quite demanding. And over time, it became quite too demanding, and I had responsibilities at home. Realized that my kids were older, but they still required some oversight and some support. And because my husband was still out of town working a lot with his new business, it kind of required me to be back home, and I had to quit the job that I was at, and try to just rethink what would fit my life, be flexible. What did I really want to do? So I assumed, because I'd been successful in the design work, working for Hnatiw Design in Edmonton, that maybe I would just get some more credentials behind me, and then do some consulting work. But as I was online looking at the course material, and I just had this sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, and I thought, well, if this is how I feel, then this isn't what I should be doing. So, what is it that I love? What do I really want to do? And sadly enough, it took about 6 months of kind of sitting and stewing into those questions for me to finally just ask myself, if money wasn't the issue, if I wasn't afraid what people would think, what would I want to fill my time with? What do I love to do? And I loved horses. Obviously, that was, the main reason why we were living out in the country. The rest of my family quite happily would live in town. So I thought, well, I love horses. I'd like to, teach riding lessons, and so I need to get strong, and I need to get balanced, and so I need to start training. But I also knew I'm not a gym rat. I knew that I wasn't going to get fit unless I had to. And I thought, well, the only way to make sure that I will show up at a class to get fit is if I teach the class. So I took my yoga teacher training, 200-hour course. But what I found is, that was a switch for me to sit down and think about what I wanted to do and how to communicate that to my family, because I was starting to show up in a way that was different than what I had in the past. And so I really had to ask myself, like the questions I've got here, what will I lose if I change? But then what will I lose if I stay the same? And what kind of regrets am I comfortable living with as I really felt like I was almost running away to join the circus? You go from, being involved in your, small oil and gas business for years, having, management positions within organizations. And then suddenly you say, well, I just want to, teach writing lessons and be a yoga teacher. It just seemed like it wasn't really something that I would be able to do forever. But I thought, I can't live not spending some time defining what I want. And so I took the plunge and signed up for a yoga teacher's training class and began to teach. And a part of teaching at the beginning of every class, you usually kind of set a mantra for yourself. And so every day for, a year, my mantra was everything I've ever wanted is on the other side of fear. And I really truly believe that, because, and that's become a test for me. If I have an option to do something, if it terrifies me, then it's usually an indication that it's maybe something I need to take on and do. But of course, I had spent quite a bit of time building up my strength and getting my affairs in order, so to speak, being willing to let go of some things and grab onto others. So there was 30 of us in the yoga teacher training, and there was 3 of us that were over 50. So, you talk about starting down a path. I was definitely one of the older ones who was, taking writing lessons, working towards getting my certification to be an equestrian teacher and a yoga teacher as well. And so, there's some ageism out there for sure, but I think sometimes we apply it to ourselves and we need to rail against that, because as I was reading in the comments and hearing from other women today, it's often not until we're older that we really step into who we actually are, when we become a little less concerned about what other people think and a little more concerned about living true to ourselves and living with our values. So it's interesting, this picture here on the very bottom picture with the lighter picture is the yoga teacher training that I started. And then the picture at the top of the page is one of my classes. And I was fortunate to be able to teach in the same place where I had taken my training. And then I taught throughout the Edmonton area. I was teaching about 5 days a week. And class sizes were getting great, up to 30 people in a class, and things were going well. I was loving my life, and much to and getting quite comfortable with it as well, I might add. But as it was said earlier, comfort zones are lovely, but nothing really grows there, because often it's the stress and the tension in our lives that we have to push against. We build those muscles from coming up against resistance. So although I had my business and things were going exactly in the direction I had planned, which was amazing, because I hadn't made much in the way of plans for myself. But lo and behold, somebody saw something in me and believed in me and asked if I would run in the municipal election in 2017, based on some of the work that I was doing in my community. And I laughed out loud initially and dismissed the question. And then they asked again a while later. And again, I laughed out loud, but this time I actually went home and was having dinner with my husband and kids. And I said, oh, by the way, I had this, funny request today. And so I said, I was asked to run in the next municipal election, and I assumed that they would have the same response I did, but they didn't. They were like, "Oh, we think you'd be great," and I was floored. So again, sometimes, as Melody said earlier, other people believe in us sometimes, or they see things in us that we don't necessarily see in ourselves. So I struggled with and wrestled with the decision for quite some time, because I had, done all this work to decide what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I was, executing the plan, and things were going well, and I was happy and getting fit and strong, and I was afraid of losing as well, and afraid of losing myself, because this wasn't what I had, planned for myself. But then again, I just thought, well, if it terrifies me, then maybe I should do it. And could I live with the regret of not knowing? So I thought, well, it'll be a good experience. I'll step into it. But even after I decided to run, and my husband and my boys and my very closest friends were supportive, but they were questioning, what I was leaving behind, because they felt like I was really just finally stepping into what I wanted to be when I grew up. And then there was a number of folks who said, "Oh yeah, no, yeah, don't do it." But I decided I was going to do it. And then I sat on that decision for another month, terrified to actually speak it out loud. But I eventually did. And then, so I started the campaign very, very late in the campaign. I think it was, August, and then spent the next, 2 months knocking on doors throughout the county and meeting incredible people, and finding out that, the very best resources we have in Sturgeon County are the people of Sturgeon County. And so I was elected to office in 2017. I was the first woman elected as mayor of Sturgeon County in 100 years, and I know I won't be the last. It was interesting, just last week, I was on a briefing with the rural municipalities of Alberta. They're prepping to meet on Wednesday. We're meeting with the Federal Minister of Rural Economic Development, Ms. Goody Hutchings. And so rural municipalities of Alberta was wanting to reach out to a number of rural mayors to talk about economic development and what our communities needed. And so it wasn't until we all got on the call, there's 7 of us there, that they realized that with the exception of one man, they were all women. So I think that, it's great. There was more, as I said, more women elected to rural office in 2017 than there were in urban municipalities. And it's great to see, 5 years later, we're still representing, and there's more and more of us. And it was, spoken to earlier, we have a different approach to problem solving. And I think it's definitely what our world needs. It's what our communities need. So I commend all of you for stepping into those leadership roles, whether it's in your organization or in your community, because we are needed. And so I just wanted to make that point as well. And so this I dream of a world where chickens can cross the road without having their motives questioned. That is actually a sign that used to hang in my chicken coop. It now hangs in my office, because people did wonder, why on earth would a yoga teacher run for office? And in the end, I wanted to run for office because I wanted to serve my community, just as I had in a number of roles in the past, whether it was with Big Sisters, Big Brothers, or Rotary, or my church, or my kids' school. This is another level of service, and I am really grateful to have an opportunity to serve in my community. Now I have maybe messed up my slides a bit. No, I think I'm good there. So yeah, this one slide is not showing up, but that's okay. It's a Dwight Eisenhower quote that says, "Plans are useless, but planning is essential." And I really found that, because it is important to make plans. But if we hold on to those plans too tightly, what the world has for us won't come our way. There's a Scottish saying, "What's for you won't go by you." And so, if there's a piece of advice I could offer, it's that, go through your process, trust the process, but don't assume you know the outcome. And don't assume you know what doors and windows will open for you. Because I'm thrilled to have an opportunity to be able to serve my community. And with, my vast experience of, was it oil and gas, marketing and advertising. I was an insurance sales person for a while. I say my experience is an inch deep and a mile wide. And that suits me well in this particular job, because I'm speaking for a wide variety of people. And I have enough experience to be able to, chat with military folks, or show up at any one of these boardroom tables and speak to my experience. And again, just to echo some of the comments before, we just really need to show up as ourselves and trust that is enough. And some of the work is very difficult. As you can see here, the lower right-hand table is the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Board. Those are some tough meetings there, and they're tough meetings because I'm often showing up there saying things that people don't want to hear. But it's my job to show up and speak for rural communities in the Edmonton Metro region. And so it's a place I often feel uncomfortable, but again, nothing grows in comfort zones. I have to show up there and do my job. And then the picture of the Oval Room was all of the mayors in the Edmonton Metro region meeting with the Minister of Municipal Affairs in the federal building. And again, if you would have, told me 5 years ago when I was, mucking stalls and mopping the floor in yoga studios across the Metro region, that I would be sitting in rooms like that, speaking on behalf of my community, I wouldn't have believed you. And then the center picture top middle is a trip to Ottawa with the Alberta Industrial Heartland Association, where I was vice chair then. I was chair for 2 years after that. And I was speaking to, at the time, that was Minister He was the Minister of Natural Resources Canada. And as fate would have it, he is now the mayor of Edmonton. And then, of course, you see the Stanley Cup and the standing there with the Burbies and council celebrating successes in small communities. And then a picture of myself with Rick Mercer, who I absolutely love. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a look at some of the variety that I have in my workday, and how proud I've been to be able to work with council to, in our last council was the first rural council in Alberta to bring in parental leave for council members, because I really want to work towards increased diversity. And often people of childbearing or child rearing years were not signing up for this type of work, because there was no clear outline of how you would be able to juggle your your elected seat with your family responsibilities. So I was really proud to be able to do that last term. And this term, we are working to bring broadband and improved communication across Sturgeon County. And as well, we're doing leading edge work on shepherding the energy evolution from oil and gas to hydrogen in Sturgeon County, in Alberta, and across Canada. And I enjoy the opportunity to sit on a number of boards and committees representing Sturgeon County, rural communities, Alberta, and women. And so, oh, there's my Eisenhower quote. Yeah, I love that one. And then this was, just so that we never get too full of yourself after you get to stand next to the Stanley Cup and rub elbows with, past prime ministers and people like Rick Mercer. I never forget, where I live and where I've come from. And so there's a bit of a fuzzy outline on this one picture, but it says, in order to keep a true perspective of one's importance, everyone should have a dog that will worship him and a cat that will ignore him. So I guess I should switch those out for hers or them for that matter. But, I go home frequently, and that's what's on the screen here. The picture on the bottom is, me walking up the street to my mom and dad's house at the end of the street. And the other picture is the main street of my hometown. So it's not lost on me how important it is to serve your community and to make sure that your community is relevant and has solid spokespeople working on the behalf of the community, because rural communities do face challenges, and I certainly don't want any place in Sturgeon County to look like my hometown, because there's been some tough times over the past few years, and we have so many opportunities here that I'm thrilled to have an opportunity to be able to work towards evolution and making sure that the great people who live, work and play in Sturgeon County have a wide variety of opportunities in front of them, because really I think that the sky's the limit, and often we limit ourselves more than anybody else around us. So I just wanted to thank you for having the opportunity to share the space with some incredible women and storytellers, and seeing courage and vulnerability on full display today. And obviously you can see from the number of things that we've all spoken to, there's no coincidence that those are all important things. And just finally, sitting in this chair, often I have to struggle with, the imposter complex of like, what am I from small town Saskatchewan doing in this role? But I think the only way we can rail against that imposter complex is to resist doubting ourselves, and to, feel the fear, acknowledge the fear, take a breath, and then go and do whatever it was that was terrifying you. Go and do it anyway, and take up enough space to allow yourself to grow into whatever it is that you're stepping into next. Surround yourself with good people that will be honest with you, and always seek to learn from everybody you cross paths with, because everybody has a story to tell. Everybody has something to teach us. And so I've learned a great deal here today, and I just thank you all very much for your time, your attention, and for your teaching as well.
Thank you, Mayor Hnatiw, for sharing with us this morning. It was great to hear your journey into how you got to where you are with us. We are right at 11:30, so I wanted to say a few things, and then so I'll just kind of blurb or babble for just a second. So Sturgeon County, we've organized a variety of different activities and events across our region. So I'm just going to send it in the chat. If you're local to our area, there are some things that are happening throughout the week, so I encourage you to check out that link. And then we also want to, as we are FCSS, we need to collect data and outcomes. So I think Ruth is going to launch a poll. If everybody can take a moment to complete the poll for us, that will help us, just gauge where we are at. So thank you so much. Everybody is so quick at responding. Thank you so much. And then we did want to provide space to ask questions, but I know that we're right at 11:30 now. So I don't know the best way to do that. If the speakers want to quickly share one piece of wisdom, or if anybody does have to leave, obviously feel free to do so. But if people want to stay on and chat for a few moments, that's okay as well. Well, thank you. And Eugenia shared another event that's happening tomorrow night. It's online as well, and it is hosted by Ladue County. Perfect. I do want to say, I don't know if this is going to make sense out loud once I say it, but watching everybody encourage everybody in the chat as well and share and just, I think, be present, and like it's just, for me it was so powerful to see like the sense of community coming alive in this Zoom call this morning as well. So that was really awesome to see. Tara had said maybe just a few questions. So yeah, if, those of the panelists, if you have to jet off, that's okay. But if you're okay to stay on and folks on the call want to ask a question, you can do so in typing it in the chat. You can come off mic if you prefer, or you can send it to Ruth Keyser and she can ask on your behalf as well. Yeah, it looks like everybody is shy. One of a piece of advice, a piece of advice one of my old colleagues had shared to me is, if your heart is racing after hearing something, that means you have something to say. And so feel free to share it. I think that that's something wherever my heart starts to race, I'm like, oh, I have something on my mind and I need to share it. I need to speak up. So if that resonates,
can I get us started with a question? I think it was Tara had mentioned the very first presentation that you find yourself overthinking a lot. And I know that that's something that really resonates with me. And I think a lot of my female friends, like, how do you combat overthinking everything and like second guessing yourself? What's everyone's kind of one piece of advice for that?
I think it was actually Mary that mentioned that in terms of the overthinking, but I sometimes do that too. And I think that the way that I combat that is I'm learning to listen to my heart. Like I'm learning to just like, okay, settle down, calm down. What is my heart really saying? What's in there? And then sometimes I have trouble, like if you're an external processor, I have trouble trying to find out, you know, what's in there. And so then there's certain people that I go to talk that through, to pull it out. So then I know what to do, because my decisions for me need to be kind of centered in me. Yeah. But I think it was Mary that had really mentioned like about the overthinking.
Thanks, Tara. Mary or Mayor, Melody, any other pieces of advice for other women out there who second guess or overthink?
I have no solutions because I am guilty of it. I'll wake up at 3 a.m. overthinking something. It is just, but I find sometimes the truth comes when I stop thinking about the item that's, overtaking me. Go do something else, think about something else, breathe deeply. That's always so important. And then often you'll get some direction, or certain things will fall away. But focusing and becoming too myopic on the thing you're overthinking, I think almost creates blind spots. So try to find some variety to distract yourself onto other things and wait for some direction and solution to come that way would be my advice.
That's really good advice. Thank you, Mayor. If anyone else wants to speak that question, or if anyone has a question, please put it in the chat. Otherwise, I have a couple more in my back pocket that I can ask on everyone's behalf. Don't be shy. Okay, I'll just go again. And this is more of a broad one for International Women's Day. Why do you think it's so important to recognize or appreciate International Women's Day? If anyone has anything to speak to that.
I can have a response to that. For me, it's interesting because I have my 4 partners are all men, and they are all men who do business in a very traditional way. And so I think one of my biggest learning, especially over this last year, because we've been really in a growth phase, has been learning to really stand strong in my own intuition, regardless of what the other people in my life think. And it so far has carried us through. And I think for me, even just being a part of this or getting to be with other women, it helps me to also see that I'm really not alone in that. And I think that, yeah, knowing that that it is possible for things to be done a different way, and that perhaps, I'm not saying that the other way hasn't worked, but I really do believe that it is time for feminine energy to step up. And so I think just to see that there are other women out there that face the same challenges as myself or all of us, is really helpful. And I think that helps to create more energy around women even feeling empowered to step into leadership.
Well said. Thank you, Wanda. I have no more questions.
Thanks for being here, Mayor Hnatiw. I think if everybody is okay, if there's no other questions, we can probably close. I do appreciate everybody's time this morning and for being here with us. And of course, Melody, Wanda, Tara, and Mayor Hnatiw. And I think, sorry, there's 5 people and I don't know if I missed anybody. I think I got it, everybody, but I did it in a different order than I've been saying it, so I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity and for having us. Sorry, I had some internet issues there in the last 5 minutes, so I was on off, but thank you so much. It was wonderful.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm going to go buy some of your salsa too.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.